How'd y'all do for the
He's had a great man playing. Cover charge for the first time ever. Yeah, because I really wanted to give the regulars and the locals so they could use the bathroom, get more without it being
Those
12.
entitled educators
That's right.
living in their ivory tower.
So we're to avoid, all that. The outside bar open, beer tub set up, so people were paying everything they want.
And financially.
A couple women yelled at me.
Not even based on merit.
I'm sorry, I don't care.
Just as I'm thinking. I got 20 kids. Or however many.
That's exactly right.
However many it is.
About
That's
4:30.
exactly right.
Yeah,
Grad school.
good weather. I was nearing the fireworks at 7 o'clock, and that seemed to work out pretty well too.
It worked out real well. You know what it did? It
Kept everybody out.
It got rid of half the traffic problems we had left at 7:45.
Yeah, other people stayed the whole time because after the fireworks, I had to go to work early because we were jammed.
Yeah, there was a pile of people out there.
Yeah, we do that every Saturday.
But the traffic getting off the island after the flip-flop flop was like,
Oh yeah, it was
last year
fun.
was an hour and a half. It took me 40 minutes to get home. This year it's like,
So we had no problem at all.
All right, boss.
it's not 7 o'clock.
Start at 5:45.
It's not 5:45 according to that clock. Oh, that's a 7, that's not a 1, excuse me. Okay, Aaron, you're up.
Before this meeting.
All right,
Well, the glare looks like a 1.
we are back for, I think this is our 5th STR work session, originally scheduled for yesterday, January 9th, moved due to the weather. This is kind of an ongoing list of what we've been discussing. Roughly color-coded, the green is something that I believe we have some consensus on. Orange is something we're close to a consensus but haven't finalized, and red still needs some final determinations. I just want to highlight way down at the bottom, enforcement. We've had some news articles and some discussions about enforcement recently, and we are going to schedule an enforcement-specific presentation in the coming weeks. It cannot happen until these amendments are done and we get the ordinance squared away for the renewal year, but we are going to discuss enforcement, the numbers of tickets, the numbers of warnings, the number of rentals, the number of rental nights, and kind of put enforcement in perspective, identify any areas for improvement. That is TBD. We don't have capacity to do that until we finish this, but it is coming. And I just want to repeat, if there's an item or an area of study that you feel related to short-term rentals that's not on this list, please email me, email City Council. We'll get it and we'll look at it. This is the time to be looking at things. So this is kind of a summary of where we're going. And tonight, as I hope we are moving towards finalizing at least a few of these, and our goal is to get an ordinance in front of council in the next month for readings prior to the renewal of business licenses, which start March 1st. We want to have this settled so we have time to educate everyone about what changed or what didn't change and have a smooth renewal season. So, thanks, Wes. We're going to start with LSTR. This was a subject area kind of brought up during the review, and we have promised to review everything, so we presented it at the last work session as kind of a broad bridge license. That presentation, I think after the presentation, the feedback we got that a broadly applicable bridge license was not a preferred alternative. We are still proposing an LSTR to replace the OSTR, and part of the mechanism of that is that the OSTR is only for 4% dwellings, and right now this is a proposal to keep LSTR for 72 nights. Everyone who's currently eligible for an OSTR would get an LSTR So for those, there's no increase in the number of licenses created, but it's an option to allow legal heirs of property to get a rental license. So rather than have OSTR, ISTR, LSTR, if council approves a narrower version of LSTR, the OSTR would roll up into that. And of course, if council wants no bridge option for any group of people, then we'll just keep ISTR and LSTR. So as proposed tonight, an LSTR would be what we call an OSTR today, so 4% owners, or someone who inherits a property on Folly Beach. And the uses, or the allowable uses in LSTR are listed there. The rental of a dwelling that's the legal residence of the owner. And, you know, one big note here is called out in the memo is that the inheritance language will need to be refined. This is just to get the concept across. The rental of any inherited dwelling for which the prior owner was the owner of record upon death. And if you can prove that you inherited a property that was owned by someone on Folly Beach, you could apply for an LSTR. Or the LSTR, also what an OSTR does now, is it covers a portion of a dwelling unit that's a 4% dwelling unit that has a 6% tax rating. The OSTR already covers that. So the only new thing here that an LSTR would do that the OSTRs don't currently do is give inheritors of property an option to rent for 72 days. That's our scaled back LSTR for your consideration and comment as we figure out what, if any, LSTR moves forward. Any feedback on that?
Well, I guess I'm in the minority, but I don't think it should be scaled back and should have included some of the ones that we discussed at the last meeting to take care of some of the exceptions we were talking about, and everybody heard me talk last time, so.
I've looked at what I said last meeting, and I don't remember saying anything about scaling anything back. I know we had talked about presenting it as an LSTR, possibly separating OSTR and LSTR, and even creating a 6% category as well that would allow across the board as a broad item on what we had talked about. So, you know, I was surprised to see that we had drawn it back as much as we did.
I spoke last time, and I'm pretty much on record. I'm not for the LSTR at all. I mean, maybe for the inheritance, but the way we had it written last time was just too broad.
We created a discussion around not creating too many exceptions. For everybody has an exception. Everybody wants an exception, and every exception you grant, there's about 5 more exceptions that tie on to that. So that's where it got scaled back in the discussion. Now, you know, Aaron went back and listened to this, and it's like he pulled us out of what the discussion was. He doesn't have a dog in the fight and doesn't care which way it goes personally. But I just don't think that everybody was talking about creating a 72-day rental and creating more and more rentals to take care of exceptions. So everybody has an exception, and all the exceptions just keep getting bigger and bigger. So that's kind of where it's come from.
To be fair, though, we also talked about reducing the number of ISTRs to accommodate for the anticipated increase of LSTRs.
And that's fine, yeah, I'm not,
Well, I'm just saying, you
Yeah.
talk about the explosion of numbers, but we.
no,
did-
I didn't say the numbers would explode. I just said everybody, when you start creating exceptions, every exception creates another exception and creates
Right.
another exception. It's like dominoes.
But the LSTR would have taken care of virtually every exception that I could think of and every exception that I've ever heard discussed. So it would end the one by one parade of people asking for special exceptions.
And that's
It would be-
fine. But I'm just saying where Aaron got this from was sitting down and going back, listening to the discussion, and that's where he drew these slides, not just this one, but all these slides from, so. you have a proposal that you wanna make it now, like you said, make it now, and then that's where you go. So
I think
next time it's like changing it, but you're gonna be voting on it.
I don't think I necessarily want to make a proposal to change it, but I know that I just wanted more information on what it would look like as far as the rental nights compared to where we're at. Yeah, it would create more rental places, but the rental nights themselves went down tremendously when we were looking at all 6%ers. And that was just some of the information that I was looking for. I'm shying away from it just after thinking about it over the holidays and just different things that we've discussed. But just as far as, I know last time when we spoke about it, I thought it was an interesting point, and it's something we want to get more information on, just to kind of see how it would actually look. So I was surprised to see it scaled back as far as the summary goes from last time, but I'm more okay with it now because I don't think that you're not doing anything to get them out of the residential district that way. So I've kind of
You're increasing that number.
you decrease the rental nights, but you increase the rental properties. So that's where this hiccup, kind of comes for me in. I like the idea of decreasing the rental nights, but you're still you have more properties that pop up. So this person say you don't have it all year round, you are increasing it. So I'm turning away from it the more I think about it.
Last time we met, I wasn't a fan of it, and so then I decided to do homework and outreach and just validate that I was being fair about this. So I spoke with a diversity of individuals, and it didn't seem that, quote, any side actually won in this, when you really did the math, because if we have 800, then we potentially decrease the cap to 675, and so on and so on and so forth. So I'm still pretty clear that I would vote no on this.
The only thing is, we're gonna get to a consensus, and I'm not speaking for or against for either side, but what you just said was the ultimate of a consensus that nobody wins. So, that's something to keep in mind as you go forward.
One thing I would like to add is, I would like to include, if anything, the downtown commercial and island commercial parcels. The multifamily, us off island, I think that's up to the HOAs, but I think that would create an opportunity to pull a lot of these STRs out of the residential areas.
Well, then you create a real estate market that's unfair, because I live across the street from downtown commercial, but your property's in downtown commercial,
Right.
so
Okay.
you can get a rental license, I can't.
Would that create something legal, Joe?
Could you ask again, would it create something legal?
I mean, illegal or something somebody could sue us over?
You can do different rules for different zoning, if that's
Right.
what you mean.
Right. So can we not zone it, just do commercial and out?
Well, we can, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, the council.
Well, council could, yeah, but you can't vote on it, I know that.
But it'd be a
That's one-
zoning thing, it wouldn't necessarily be this ordinance.
Okay, could we recommend a zoning?
So
With this.
first, are you saying LSTRs in those zones or ISTRs in those zones?
Something we could discuss.
I just think we've been fairly consistent about no exemptions and exceptions, and I think if we maintain that, we'll get to the 800 number quicker, and then the wait list can actually do
Well, I
its
mean,
job.
if you did the island downtown commercial, you're looking at, I think it's a total of 161.
No, that ain't right.
What do you mean it's not right?
Island downtown commercial, you gotta go,
We have it.
No, I got it right here, from City Hall. It's 161 at 6% downtown commercial and island commercial partials.
What's you give everybody?
And then a license, 168.
This is from the chart that Jenna produced a couple months ago that you guys have with the breakdown of zoning districts and licenses.
All right.
Just while we wait on Wes, I will say that commercial property exemptions are later on the slideshow, and we can talk about it then or now.
Okay.
If we go anything related to zoning, just want to be clear that if you guys approve it, we can execute it, but it will be executed through zoning amendments. It will not be executed through this ordinance, because this ordinance is not a zoning ordinance, it is a business license ordinance. The entire cap is a business license ordinance, not a zoning ordinance. So if you guys decide to do it, we can do it, but we will need to carefully consider how to implement it through zoning and as it interacts with this.
Because that's,
I'm gonna make that point for the record and out loud.
I mean, it's something to think about, but I honestly, I've been looking at this issue for
Yeah.
various reasons. I think you can control the location in the business license ordinance. It doesn't necessarily, that's a preliminary opinion.
Yeah, I understand.
It doesn't necessarily have to be a zoning ordinance.
What does that give you, though? I mean,
So just,
it's just adding to the number.
A lot of the residents who were there, they wanted that to happen. I think a lot of people I've talked to, they look at that and they think that that's common sense to these units
So just
in the
so-
commercial district.
if you guys don't mind, I'll catch the folks in the audience. We've counted the total number of residential use, like, when I say residential parcels, I'm not talking about the zoning, I'm talking about the use of it. So the total number of residentially used parcels in the downtown commercial and island commercial districts is 349. And currently there are 161 ISTRs in their zones, which leave about 188 properties that would be eligible for ISTRs if we allowed all 6% owners in those zones to get licenses.
But currently, that's not.
and that begs the question, you talk about, commercial properties. Why are you gonna stop it downtown? Why don't you take all the island commercial? If you're gonna talk about commercial properties, why don't you talk about all the commercial properties?
And that
I
is
just
for
said that, downtown commercial and island commercial as well. That's
Well,
it.
then it's more than 161 units.
No, it's
No, so
right
there's,
here.
so there's 349 total units, and there are currently 161
I
licensed
got that right.
STR
That's
listed.
just downtown, that ain't island commercial.
Yes, sir.
Yes, it is.
It's downtown commercial and island commercial. So there's 349 units and 161.
6%, yeah, but it's more than just, but all 349 would become eligible
Right, it would make.
for
it-
Right,
ISTR.
But even if we did it with the 72 day, would that be something to look at?
I haven't talked to that many people that are in favor of that kind of thing. And
So
they're
I'm
taking the
throwing
number
it
to
out there.
988.
Talk to the people at
I know.
Oceanfrontville, like, and I pulled Oceanfrontvilles out because that place was built for short-term rentals. So if you get them out of residential areas, that's an area that they should be in, where they're more controlled, they're monitored, they're close to commercial district, they're not causing problems in the residential districts. That's why that's coming back up, especially for the multifamily. We had a lot about it during the original run before this last election. Not to say anything about what you're saying, but we did hear a lot about that in the beginning. That, you
Well,
know,
it
they
was-
felt left out of their
Well-
building, because they have their own parking, their own security, their own
And
everything.
it- and it
So
was-
they're different than a house, you know, on the
But-
fourth block.
Wait a minute, they've grown into that. Originally, they were not advertised for short-term rentals, they were advertised for people to live in.
Oh,
And in
yeah.
'98, when they were
That's right.
built, they were advertised for houses, just like every other short-term rental out here was advertised for a living place. They evolved or morphed into short-term rentals. They morphed into having their own private security because they had to, just because their short-term rentals was causing, the short-term rentals was causing short-term rentals to be aggravated with short-term rentals.
Hollywood used to be a post office, but it morphed into other things. I mean, things change over time, but as it stands now, that is a place where
But
if
the
if you're
point-
trying to get them out of residential, that place it's
But
self-sufficient.
the point is, it was not built for short-term
I
rentals.
didn't say it was built.
Yeah,
for
you did.
short-term rentals. Oh, okay, well, now it's designed for short-term rentals. How about
So
that?
It makes sense, because as long as they still apply to the cap, for everyone that goes there, that's one less in the neighborhood. But the bad thing about it is, it does, I think as the mayor alluded to, it creates winners and losers and doesn't treat everybody the same.
Anything we talk about in this is gonna create winners and losers. So I think you can kind of take that comment and.
Unless everybody gets 72, and then everybody loses a little, and everybody wins a
I hear
little.
you.
Or we just say no exceptions. I mean, that, I think is a more even-handed way to go about it.
I'm going by also what the committee, SCR committee recommended as well in their recommendation number 3, which was to allow high-density multifamily units not to be included in the cap.
Well, if you do that, people at Mariners K are gonna lose their insurance. I mean, you've got issues with liability insurance at that facility that they lose the cap, they have a big problem on their hands.
What kind of,
They lose their liability insurance. They cannot go above 25% of the units.
You're talking about off island, you're talking
Yeah.
about Mariners Cay, I'm
Right.
talking about, I'm
It's,
talking,
it's any condo group, any
I'm
condo.
talking about downtown commercial,
I'm
Holland
talking
commercial.
about-
It's any condo
They
group.
can set their own rules.
I know
If you,
I know
if you
it
go
is.
past
They
25%.
choose not to,
I
they're the ones
understand,
that
yeah,
exploit
I
it.
understand that.
So-
But
So Rachel Way's exploited that, not us.
All right,
So
Okay.
just
Therefore,
to-
they
all right,
they
well,
Rachel
let's
Way.
bring it all in the same.
So to put a number on that and make sure we're at least all common terms. In the downtown commercial and island commercial zoning districts, there's 349 units and currently 161 6% licenses. So that would create the opportunity for 188 ISTR or LSTR licenses, if we go that route.
Mr. Pope, I'm very clear that this is about business licenses. What I want to know is when we get into the zoning issues that are clearly zoning, spot zoning, event houses, commercial, those zoning issues, would that, go, do you have a question?
The- What's the specific
The
question?
specific question is, if we stay to the business license discussion, later on, would we get into zoning and then make a decision, does that go to plant, where does that go? I'm just trying to get
If
to.
we go something that needs to be approved through zoning, it's an ordinance that's remanded to planning for public hearings. They make a recommendation to you guys, which is just a recommendation. You can approve or disapprove it, and then you adopt it as a zoning ordinance. In the broadest sense, this cap ordinance regulates the number of licenses, not where they can be issued.
I understand.
So when we veer off into where licenses can and can't be issued, we get closer to zoning and further away from this, in the broadest sense.
Thank you.
Let's move on, or we'll never get through.
Yep.
That was LSTRs, we will process that feedback and bring something back at the next meeting. So next up is the wait list. I stood here a few weeks ago and said to everyone that multiple models exist, and then I hit Google, and after 42, I stopped reading. And I just want to say, you know, if anyone wants to volunteer to Google to find a customized, multi-tiered wait list, please find it and send it to me. I am not saying it does not exist. I read 42 ordinances, short-term rental cap ordinances. Some communities have caps for the whole community, some have it in certain zoning districts, some of it have it building-specific caps. Out of those 42 ordinances, the wait lists basically broke down into first come, first serve, or lottery. There were 9 communities that had no wait list at all. You just called up City Hall and said, is there a license available? And they told you yes or no. So we've talked about last time kind of a tiered wait list with a phase 1 and a phase 2 for maybe different selection criteria. The 2 examples that I found of that were Riverside County in California, Tillamook, Oregon, Tillamook. Basically, each one of these communities had an initial phase where they allowed people to get on the first wait list. They selected folks from that wait list until they awarded the total number of licenses, and then they moved to a second tier. Neither of those examples, nor any example that I could find, gave weight on the wait list to how long you had owned the property, whether you were a full-time resident or a part-time resident or 6% owner. They were universally lottery or first come, first served. There was no waiting. Again, I'm not standing here saying that they don't exist. I didn't find one, and if someone finds one, please email it to me, and I will get it to City Council. So Wes, you can just pause on the next one. Oh wait, I took out the list of communities. I can provide you the list of communities if you want. So next up. So based on our discussions last week and my research, we're going to propose a 2-phase wait list. And this is also a way that if City Council chooses, instead of license exemptions, they can give preference on the wait list for license awarding, and I'll explain that in a minute. Basically, you would open up an initial application period. My proposal is just that you open an initial period for anyone who owns property out here. That's the only qualification I'm proposing at this time. you have 30 days if you own a property to get on the phase one wait list. If council would like to substitute license exemptions for preference on the wait list, you guys could consider whatever criteria you wanted. Properties in the commercial district, properties in multifamily buildings, properties that have been owned for 10 years. A lot of things we've talked about as waiting, or like weighted, not waiting, W-E-I-G-H-T, or exemptions could be incorporated into phase one of the lottery list. But once phase one is over, you close that wait list and you start awarding licenses by lottery to that group of people. You can set the number, you could say only the 100 or 200 or 800, but you award everyone in phase one a license by lottery from that wait list. And when you've exhausted phase one, you award first come, first serve from the phase two list. So essentially we'd say, wait list opens on made up date. This is not the day that a wait list opens.
The
Wait list
third
opens
Tuesday
on,
next month.
You know, March 1st. People, right now, I'm proposing, anybody who owns a piece of property out here has until April 1st to sign up on the wait list. The first licenses available will be awarded from that wait list until we either run out of licenses to award, we cycle through the full 800, or we cycle through all the people who signed up on that wait list. And then we move to phase two, and for the rest of history, it's first come, first served.
Could you explain that, the weighted, W-E-I-G-H-T again? So are you gonna have like mini lotteries in the lottery?
No, I'm saying if you wanted to weight a certain factor and for preference in getting a license first, you put them in group one. If you want
But everybody can be in group one.
Well, it's up to you guys who's in group one. If you want to give preference to a certain group, say commercial properties, you say phase one is only for properties in the commercial district.
So you would have mini lotteries,
No, you'd
a
have.
lottery for the
No,
weighted
sir.
people.
No, sir. So whichever group you want to give preference to goes in phase one.
Be
And
residents.
only that group.
Right.
Only that group, or all the groups.
So you have mini lotteries. You'll have a lottery for
No, you,
a special group, and then a lottery for.
No.
no, sir.
You're just creating a different pool.
You put all the special groups into the same phase.
Right.
We want commercial properties and people who have lived here for 50 years to be the first ones to get a license. They're the only ones eligible for phase one. As license come available, we pull from phase one by lottery. It could be either one of those.
But the other way was, anybody who's a property owner gets to put in, and they're drawn at random.
My-
That's his suggestion.
My proposal is that the only criteria to be in phase one is you own property. If city council would like to give additional criteria for phase one, that's what we're here to hear. And basically, you would then be giving preference for coming off the wait list to those groups. So that's kind of the overall structure, a phase one wait list, and then the first come, first served wait list for everybody else that starts when we're done with that first group. There are some basic criteria that I found to be common across a lot of ordinances. You need to own property, only one, you have to be the current owner of the property, not, I might buy a property here in 10 years, so I'm gonna get on the wait list. Only one entry per owner. If you are selected, you have to use it. I did not find any example of a wait list where if you're selected, you reserve your right to step back in at a future date and take your opportunity. It's dead as ever. So again, if it's out there, please find it and send it to me. No fee to make it easy to get on the wait list. And if we can find out that you're renting without getting a license while you're on the wait list, you are removed from the wait list and you don't get to get a license for whatever period of time you guys choose. And the wait list is public, so everyone knows where they are on the wait list at any time.
Well, they don't know where they are, they just know they're on the wait list.
Phase one would be a lottery. They'd know they're on it,
Yeah.
but phase two in the future.
Well, phase two, yeah, from the second time.
I agree with all, you can't pass, you gotta use it, but I am wondering, you plan on awarding new licenses at one particular time and not, if somebody drops off, the next one comes up. So you end up, like if somebody drops or sells their ISTR in September. You don't plan on going to the first person in line in September and saying,
Administratively, we'd prefer to do it all at license renewal, so that we know at the end of renewal, 17 licenses didn't renew this year. We're gonna award 17.
like maybe in February, and that gives people time to get their stuff together to apply by May 1st.
The exact date, I don't know, but
But one time a year.
yeah, one time
So
a
if
year.
20
not-
people
not
drop off,
ongoing.
20 will be awarded in February or March, whatever that date is,
Right.
not 2 in October, 3 in November.
Correct.
Okay.
So this would be an annual process.
Administratively, that's the easiest. We don't currently track property sales. You know, we have people who die or move or sell their property all the time. They don't tell us until 6 months after the business license due date next year, when we write them, we're gonna close your business license. Oh, yeah, I moved, you know, I'm gone. So administratively, it's easier to do it once a year. But, you know, any feedback on qualifications for phase one? Anything?
I'd like to see residents, the length of term they've been here, and then commercial and island commercial preference.
What's the length of time you thinking about?
Length of time,
Residents.
Residents?
a resident, do it, I don't know, do it by years that they were here. I mean, if they've been
Well,
here
I'm
40
Well, how many years?
Yeah, how many years?
What's the cutoff?
What, talking about what category, or like 40 years, 50 years?
Yeah, but
10
how long would
years?
you need to have owned property to be on the phase one wait list?
See, that's, it's so hard to do that. You'd have to do, like,
I'd have
if you're
to-
10 years, you get 10 balls in it. If you're 1 year, you get 1 ball in the lottery. It has to be something like that if you're gonna do it weighted, or else you're gonna eliminate too many people. You can't, it needs to be all residents. But yes, if you've been here for 30 years, you should have a higher priority than somebody who's been here for 1. I'm sorry, you've paid your dues, you've been a part of our community for that long. You should have a higher priority, especially you figure at that time, there's more reasons why you need to sell your house. It is probably health issues or old age or something of that sort. I mean, but you can't just say you have to live here 30 years to be in the phase one. That cuts out majority of the island.
That's what I'm hearing to hear from you guys.
No, I mean-
That's
No,
what I'm
I
jumping.
mean,
If you're
that's
gonna wait
what
it,
I had in
it needs to be
mind.
balls in the
I like that.
hopper, and not just, that's the only people that can apply. I think if you're in a commercial district, maybe you get an extra ball than residential, because we'd rather get out of residential and into commercial district
Correct.
eventually.
Correct.
But that's how you have to weight that. You can't just say, well, they're your only ones that can apply. But as I talked to y'all before about that, y'all didn't like that idea.
Well, I'm like, I mean, and you've heard I think we'll just weight it by amount of time you've owned your property. If you've owned it 50 years and the next person's owned it 49 years, and as you said, you paid your dues, everybody understands seniority, and for the first round, seniority is what determines the order.
Think about the NBA draft lottery, because it's very similar to that, or the alligator hunting lottery or something, where you just get points in it, you get more balls in the lottery than that guy. It's not saying you can't get in there, but technically I've got a better chance at it, but it's still a lottery.
All right. Mr. Farley, is yours based on property ownership or residency?
Property ownership.
All right. Anybody else have any feedback for?
See, that's the difference in his and his, because he said residency in his
That's why we're here.
ownership.
We just gotta define the groups,
That's exactly what I'm asking you guys to.
0 to 10, 10 to 20, that kind of thing.
So, broad consensus that something related to the term of property ownership? influences your
Well,
chances?
I'm not, and I tell you why I'm not.
I've been thinking about 10.
I'm not in consensus of that, just because I think, you're gonna sign up. I personally like the idea of having a lottery, like the draft lottery. You're gonna sign up, everybody can put their name on the list they want to. We're gonna pull out 800. We'll put them in another pot. When the license comes up, and we'll start drawing from them. But if you don't get on the first 800 and your name's on the list, then you can just be in phase 2. And whenever phase 2 comes about. And I think that's the easiest, simplest way. I'm thinking about what these guys have to do to try to keep up with all that. I just think that's the easiest way, fairest way. Everybody's name can go in there if you want your name in there, and you can see if you get the top 800. And if you don't make the 800, you could be in phase 2.
Sometimes the easy road is not the best.
You really think we'll have 800 that'll apply?
If you don't, then hey, there ain't no problem.
I think not having the ability to take a pass is gonna keep the number down. I don't think you'll have near 800 applicants for an ISDR.
Why do we have to have 800 applicants? You know, keep doing this 800 around, why? Why are we opening up 800 of them?
Well, we already got how many, we're saying that the cap's 800, so.
Right,
Hey,
but we
all
don't
right,
need
well,
800 people on the wait list.
Choose 200 for the wait list, I don't
Right,
care.
yes.
But I'm just saying,
800 over.
it's just easier to say, hey, everybody put their name in a hat. If you're a winner, you're a winner. If you're not a winner, you go on the wait list for the next
And
round.
the reason the maximum 800 was chosen, because that's the maximum number of licenses. If you allow
Right.
up to 800 people, and no one said we would get 800 people, but up to 800 people, that group would get the first 800, that group would fill the cap.
No, you're talking about people that already have ISDRs having to enter into the draft,
No.
into the lottery?
No.
So I'm saying only a certain number of licenses come up available.
Right.
If you want to prefer people to get licenses before other people, the way to prefer the first 800 licenses going to the preferred group is to allow up to 800 members of the preferred group to be in the first phase. Because that will guarantee that the first 800 licenses go to the preferred group.
The 800 new licenses.
Yes, yes.
To
Replacement
have
licenses.
800 applicants, wouldn't that mean almost 100% saturation of people that have ISDRs and want ISDRs? That'd be 1,600 out of
It's up
2,700.
to 800, to allow
If-
up to 800. So we have full replacement of current licenses with new licenses. The preferred group would get first shot at the first full round of licenses.
So for OSTRs, you don't need a lottery. And we already said, everybody on the island that's a resident can get a 72-day license, all right? The residents.
Right.
So if you already have an ISTR, you don't need to get on the wait list, you don't need to get in the lottery, you just need to keep your license up.
There's 920 of them now.
So you don't need, that 900 don't need to get there. It's the people that wanna be in line for when 17 of that 900 drop off. So you don't have to do 800, you could do 200, you could do 100. I mean, whatever that number is you wanna do. If you say, I wanna do 100 weighted things and you gotta be here, you had to buy your house and own it since 1998 or whatever, then that's fine, that's where you are. Don't get confused with the 72-day license and ISTR, because this wait list is only for the ISTR guys.
Right, but I can't understand why you're picking 800
So
as the.
Well, you don't have to,
Potential.
that's what I told DJ, you can get 200.
How are we gonna have 800?
Well,
That's a fairy tale world, and we have 800.
So, Mr. Farley, I'll explain
We'll
to
end
you.
up losing residents if that's the case.
We may only have
The number
2
comes
people
up, they're
sign
taking
up
off.
for the wait list.
Right,
So it says, we may only have 10 people, 5 people, but if you want a certain preferred group to be the first people to get licenses,
Ladies and gentlemen,
before anyone
hold
else
it
gets the
down.
licenses, you need to allow up to 800 of those people to sign up. So all the preferred people get all the licenses before a new license goes to a non-preferred people. It does, we might get 50 people on the wait list, we might get 790. I'm just saying cap it at 800, so that those people get the first 800 licenses.
You only might have 50 people sign up, like you said,
You can throw 800 out the window, and maybe 800 people don't sign up. It's just, if you want a certain group of people to get licenses before anyone else, you'd have to allow up to 800 of them to get licenses, because that's how many licenses are gonna be available over time. Otherwise, you get 50 people in your preferred group get a license, and then when the 51st license comes available,
Okay.
the non-preferred person gets it.
Okay, so we're,
no, it's okay.
All right, but the only qualification I heard from anyone is length of property ownership. Does anyone else have in commercial district?
Commercial district, because that will get them out of residential into commercial faster. And that was a big pet peeve before the referendum and the SDR committee's recommendations, finding some way to get them out of residential into commercial.
But remember, you can't get them, you can't get all of them out of residential into commercial.
I know you can't get all of them, but if you get 5 of them, then guess what? Those neighbors on those 5 houses are gonna be a lot happier. Cause we heard that constantly from people.
But it doesn't-
2 years ago, when this whole thing first started.
But it doesn't solve the problem in the end.
It's never gonna solve the problem.
Okay,
Nothing
but
we're doing is
just-
gonna solve the problem.
Well, the way you presented it sounded like it's gonna solve the problem if you get them all in the commercial area.
No, man, it just makes it a little bit easier. And it's easier today than it was yesterday. That's
Okay,
all
so
we're doing.
Mr. Pope,
all we're doing.
I understand that we're discussing weighted. The definition seems to be seniority, whatever way we define that. So one of the questions that I have is more a fair and ethical issue, I get. It's more of a legal issue. When we give preferences, and this might be a Attorney Wilson question, is that okay? If we give a preference?
Generally, yes. If there's some concerns there, I'd rather talk about it in executive session.
Okay.
But, I mean, you know, just, only if it's a suspect class. I mean, you know,
Okay.
you can't pick and choose based on gender, race, nationality, and that sort of thing, right? But otherwise, kind of free to choose.
So STI status is no,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Commercial zoning, multifamily buildings, term of ownership, any other categories anyone would suggest? All right, we will rework this into a weighted phase one, and then a first come, first serve phase two, with some options for how to execute phase one. Is that generally agreeable?
The only other thing I would ask is, as you do that, would you also be able to report to us how doable it is for the system, the staff? I mean, we might come up with great ideas, but the execution is really,
I will always report how doable something is.
okay.
I can tell you that if it seems a little crazier and it's a little more on staff, you can always put like a $20 fee on these things, and you can get another staff person to handle that problem. Because I mean, it's a nominal fee, and everybody in the world does it for any kind of system like this.
Okay.
I mean, everything I've ever entered, like a lottery, it's just like $10 or $20 fee to get in it, and that's to offset the administrative
Cost.
cost. If it were to get, hairy carry,
Thank you.
All right.
we need more revenue streams. So.
Thank you. Next up, wait, so let's get this one, this slide. These are just the technical amendments that I believe we may have some agreement on. Offering or advertising more bedrooms for rent than are legally permitted in the structure. Just a note, in your packets, H says advertising more bedrooms. We did get some feedback. It's gonna, I propose that say advertising or offering more bedrooms, just to cover our bases. Does anyone have any comments on making advertising more bedrooms than are legally permitted for your structure a violation?
I thought we already did this. I
No.
thought it was in the first round of things that we did.
Yeah, we're circling back to put a on all the, a
Okay.
period on all of them. So this one, I'm gonna say this is moving forward. All right? You guys will see this language.
I agree.
All right? Next up, the provisional short-term license, just a small change here, under the definition. I'd like it to read, issued to a dwelling unit for short-term rental for no more than 9 days, instead of to allow compliance, just in compliance with the requirements of the act. And this license would only cover the rentals disclosed as part of the sale of a house with rentals on the books. It's not for 90 days of new rentals that weren't disclosed, it's only for that list of rentals. All right, let's property transfer.
Were we gonna have something about the 90 days, the 90 days counts towards the 72 days of the next owner? Right.
I don't think we've gotten to that point, because we haven't put anything about LSTR in anything officially yet. I think these are ones that we know that we're all good with the technical amendments that we've agreed to.
Yeah, this license is only for someone who's not eligible for another license.
Right, but, so, you die, you leave it to your heir, and you have,
Then your heir would get a LSTR, well, if the LSTR passed.
so
Your
if
heir
that,
would get
if that
LSTR.
passed, but he wouldn't get another 72 days after consuming whatever was left of the
This is
72
only
days.
when properties are sold with So if a purchaser of a property can't get an LSTR, then that collection's moot. And-
If I rent my
and-
property and I die, I leave it to my son.
Right.
And my son is eligible if the air thing passes, but I still got 60 days on the books that this would allow him to.
No, sir. So this is only for people who buy a property that has rentals on the books, and that person who bought a property can't get any license.
Okay.
Your ear would
So he
have
would,
said,
he would just have an,
he would get.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. All right. Next up. Next up. So.
Excuse me.
guys. I'm sorry. So next up is property transfer. Currently, if you transfer your property, you lose your ISTR. Your ISTR can be revoked. There's no definition of property transfer. This would match our definition of property transfer with the state's definition of accessible transfer of interest. And I added on to this slide for some clarity from the last discussion. Most of these are, I guess the way to describe it is these are things that aren't really a change of ownership. They're not a meaningful change of ownership. If I put it into my LLC, the property has not meaningfully changed ownership. It's still me. It's just an entity of me. Are there any questions about these? All right. Next up is demolition. We came to you guys at the last meeting. We were trying to define how much demolition means you lose your CO, you lose your license. So we're proposing to scratch that approach to kind of defining definition. And we're now proposing that if you tear down a unit that has a license and you build back another unit, and this has two requirements here, the same number or fewer bedrooms and the same number or fewer heated square feet. I want to make sure that everyone realizes there's two proposals there. It's not just the number of bedrooms, it's also tied to the square footage. So if you have a licensed property, you tear it down and you add square feet, or you add heated square feet, or you add bedrooms, the new thing does not qualify for a license. Right. Any comments on that?
Just a real quick question. If somebody was doing major renovations, and sometimes these are taking more than a year, would they still be able to keep their license, or would it have to be transferred?
There's nothing right now that would say they would lose it.
Okay, all right, double check.
But
Somebody
if you
asked
add
me
a-
that.
But if you add a bedroom or more square footage, with that actually renovations, we have to address that. That's a good catch.
Okay,
For folks who just add a bedroom, period. But in terms of demolition, if you tear down a house
right.
and you replace it with the same size or smaller house with the same number of bedrooms or fewer, you get a license.
Okay.
Well, in renovations is a whole different,
Yeah.
a whole different subject, because you have to be able to
Yeah.
to match,
Renovations is
if you're not on the sewer line, you have to be able to match your septic system and.
We're gonna add renovation to the list for next week.
Okay,
Next up is defining good standing and grace period for annual renewal. Right now, there's a firm deadline for rental licenses. This proposes a 30-day grace period for rental licenses. They've got 30 days after the due date to apply. If not, you lose your license. Last year, in 2023, there was one person who applied 2 days late, and we denied that license. If you guys accept the 30-day grace period, we'll also ask you whether or not to make it retroactive to this year. But for now, the question is for licenses moving forward, do we create a grace period for license renewal?
I don't think so. My personal opinion is you're just creating, you're not fixing anything, because somebody's always gonna be late. If it's 31 days, then, you ought to give it to me because I was only 1 day late from the 30-day grace period. Or if it's 90 days, I was only 1 day late from the 90-day grace period. I just don't think, I think everybody that has a business, me included, know when your business license are due. You have the legality, you have the responsibility to get your license to operate.
do we offer, like, regular business license or grace period?
All regular business licenses have a 5% per month late period and can basically be renewed anytime and just pay the period, pay the penalty.
I think a 30-day grace period is pretty kind. And even to make it retroactive, being that they're such a small number. We made that, I'm okay.
I think it's kind because I'll be honest, I forget what my license is. Sometimes you get wrapped up in other things and you don't think about it, I'll pay the late fee, that's fine. But taking my business away because I was a day late, I'd hate to be the person on the other side of that glass.
So what happens when you show up 31 days and you're 1 day late from the 30-day grace period?
Well, I'm just saying, as it stands now, I just pay a late fee for it. If we have a 30-day grace period, then that's what it is, but there needs to be some sort of grace period. If it was 31 days, we have a 30-day grace period, then you missed your 30 days, but.
But if you missed
It's
a year,
still
you had
not-
a year to plan for getting your license, and you missed a day by 2 days or 3 days, you still,
So you make the fine bigger, there's
we don't
always
have a
something.
fine. Now, if you wanna create a fine for this, that's a different thing.
Well, then,
There's not one in here.
So we would default to the standard late penalty, which is 5% per month, so it'd be 5%.
Is that 5% of what you would have to pay for a license? So if I made $100,000 last year, it'd be 5% of what I had to pay for a $100,000 license?
Right, so if your license fee was $200, you owe us $10 extra.
Okay.
Mr. Pope, I just have a question, how we decided 30, why not 45?
30 days is a nice round number.
Well, not 90.
I'm
That's the
just,
round number.
I'm just asking, just for clarity, that, if we looked at 45,
We do have
30.
30, we do have 30 days for other things in our code.
Okay, so
That's
remaining
as far as it
consistent
goes.
with 30 days.
Yes.
Thank
Sci-
you.
I will say there's no science to 30 days. It could be 60, 90, 15.
But our other is 30, so we, consistency. Thank you.
All right, Wes. So this is for the partial 6% ratings. You'll see this slide says LSTR and OSTR. If an LSTR is approved to replace OSTR, then the LSTR would cover the rental of a partial 6% rating. If LSTR goes away, it's owner occupied. So right now, we have a handful of properties that are legal residences with portions of the residence tax at 6%, and Charleston County does not count the 72-day limit for renting that house. So they're still legal residences, but there's room in there that can be rented as much as they want. So this is a change saying that if you're one of those partially taxed dwelling units, you only get 72-day rentals.
I'm not in favor of that.
I don't think we need that one in there. We don't need to add that one in there yet because we don't know if LSTRs are gonna pass or not.
Well, I was just gonna
We
say,
kept it out of the
that
other
would be a
one.
good compromise if LSTRs passes.
If it does, that should be held in another section, just like what Mr. Foley was bringing up earlier, that we haven't crossed that bridge yet. If we cross that bridge, a couple of these need to be tweaked. But I think we're looking for just, confirmation of the technical amendments as presented that we've already looked at,
All right.
without curveballs.
All right. These are the substantives. These are short slides. And that's what we're here to discuss as we move towards trying to come to some final resolution of these issues. No valid 2022 license, no exemption. That discussion has moved on, and so there's no exemption proposed for those folks last year who got caught by the moratorium. Any final comments on that? Not final, any additional comments on that? All right. Building permits prior to the referendum. We talked about that in July, we talked about it a couple weeks ago. Any additional feedback on that topic? All right, we'll move forward with no exemption. Inactivity affecting good standing. So when we came back a few weeks ago, we talked about inactivity being based on the dollars earned, but location, condition, house size, dollars earned is all over the place, apples to apples. So we switched to the number of nights rented. Right now, we're proposing a 14 nights total rental. That's 2 weeks. That's the minimum amount of activity to keep your license.
I think it's way too low.
That does seem low.
And the reason I'm gonna say I think it's low, because as we've been talking about 72-day licenses, this, that, and the other, if you're renting your house for 14 days a year, that license is better off being with somebody else. Because we're we're not getting the bang for our buck with it. There's obviously, we're talking about tiered wait list. If you're waiting in line for a license and you're just doing the bare minimum to get by, I'm sorry, that's gonna be people squatting on a license that don't need to.
Let me seize upon the opportunity to agree with Chris. I think it's too low as well, so.
So what would you put in there?
Well, I can, if you guys can hold, if 14's too low, broadly speaking, we will hopefully at the next meeting we'll have the estimated nights rented last year for every rental on the beach, and we can tell you the average number of nights property is.
That would be a good number.
Perfect.
Yeah,
That's what I asked, I think, last time,
yeah.
to get that number.
So, right.
So next up is allowing purchasers to obtain licenses. To date, I've heard no movement to allow licenses no licenses transferred, but allow the next buyer of a property to get a license. Is there any additional feedback on that topic? Okay. Allowing heirs to obtain licenses. The current proposal for this topic is an LSTR for heirs. We kind of talked about it a few minutes ago, but does anybody have any more feedback to offering a rental option for heirs?
Well, this goes hand in hand with what we said about the other ones. If LSTR doesn't pass, I think if you inherited a house, from your parents or immediate family members, I think you can keep the license or have a chance to obtain one if LSTR doesn't pass. This just says LSTR, so if LSTR doesn't pass, I think it's something that we need to talk about again and figure something out, because I think we've all said immediate family needs to be eligible for something.
I'd like to add to that, I actually would like to discuss it more from a beneficiary or inheritor language. I think that is something we need to discuss.
Multi-unit commercial and HOA property exemptions. So this is more than just the downtown island commercial we talked about earlier. This is a broader one. Tonight, I heard wait list preference for properties that are multi-family or commercial, but no exemptions. Is that?
I'm good with that.
I think that's how it sits right now, unless something happens with LSTRs. But I think using the wait list as an option seemed to be a popular idea between everybody.
Okay. And this is a similar topic. The 4% owners who lose their 4% rating because of hardship. The mayor did have a proposal earlier to allow certain types of hardship to qualify those folks to get an ISTR. They would have been covered by the LSTR. We could still add them to the LSTR. We could give them an ISTR, or we could tell them they don't get a license. Any feedback on that topic? This is for a current legal resident or permanent resident and legal resident who has an OSTR, and something happens, they have to go to a facility, something happens, a hardship to be accommodated, and the property switches to a 6%. Right now, they would not be eligible for any license. We had proposed they could be in that LSTR group. When we walk back the LSTR group, there's now no allowance for them. So do you guys want to move forward with some sort of hardship exemption for current 4% residents who lose their 4% rating?
I think the challenge is defining the hardship. I mean, that's pretty subjective.
That is a challenge. Before we get to the nitty gritty of arguing over which hardships qualify, discussing which hardships qualify, is the principle of allowing 4% owners to convert their licenses to ISTRs something you guys want to move forward with?
I would think for right now, leaving it listed under LSTR as that part of that conversation would probably be the best move, or else we're gonna get bogged down in it, and we might not even wanna do it. But if we do the LSTRs to some degree, that would be a good place to put something about that. If you can define hardship.
Later on, I don't have a problem discussing the notion of a hardship.
Yeah, I think it's,
And to be completely honest, we could put something in there and leave it up to the license official You know, like prove what a hardship is and let them hear it. And if it's a valid hardship, you know, obviously they'd have to have some direction, but let them plead their case to them. And it just to be honest with you, you're not gonna have a widespread hardships. It's gonna be a case by case basis. So the license hearing official could also be the ruling party. Yes, that is truly a hardship.
I will, you know, go back to how difficult that would be. I would say.
It was just an idea. We don't have to dwell on it. It's fine.
I just, again, I agree with Chris. I think it's gonna be really, really hard to define the hardship. And if it's based on illness, I don't think the government has any business knowing what my illness is. And I shouldn't have to come forward and display something that anywhere else would be HIPAA regulated and nobody would be entitled to know it. Yet to get a hardship, I gotta reveal personal medical data to qualify. I just think that's wrong and government ought to stay out of health stuff.
So are you advocating then for an ISTR without a hardship or no ISTR?
No, I like the LSTR that covers everything. But no, I'm not for an exception because I think the qualifications just puts us in an area that we ought not be.
All right. Well, those are all the things we've talked about and the current status of them. We'll process this meeting and come back to you guys at the next meeting. We do need to set a date for the next work session. I will be out of town next Tuesday. So if you guys want to do it next week, we can.
Next Tuesday's perfect.
Yeah, we'll do it next Tuesday, that'd be great for me too. But we can do it now live, or we can poll you guys tomorrow.
How about the 25th?
Whoa. Thursday the 25th?
Yeah.
No. I can tell you I won't be here Thursday the 25th. I don't know why would we move it to Thursday instead of Tuesdays? We've been doing council stuff's always on Tuesdays. Why would we move it to Thursday?
This is a work session. You can pick any day you want to.
I hear you. I can go ahead and tell you I won't be here on the 25th.
That's good.
I already
How
have
about the
plans.
24th, the 22nd?
22nd is
Here's
Monday.
17.
Or the 23rd.
If,
Why don't we do it next
The
week?
22nd.
We will be here on the 17th, but that only gives us 2 working days.
What's wrong with the
Monday's a
23rd?
holiday.
Monday is a holiday.
I'm fine with 23.
23rd is the Tuesday.
Tuesday.
It's 2 Tuesdays from now. We've been meeting on Tuesdays. We can keep it consistent. Just throw it out there.
23rd's good.
Okay.
Fine.
All right.
We don't-
We do it earlier again?
6 o'clock,
We do it earlier again?
December.
4 o'clock?
What was our last early meeting?
4 o'clock was good. 6 o'clock's fine. I mean,
What was our last early meeting? What time
we did 10 a.m. for one. We were doing it 10 a.m., but we're doing 10 and a 4.
I mean, if folks want to attend it,
I can't do it at 10, so.
Yeah, let's just do it at 4. That was good. Staff's still here. That's so we don't have to keep them too long after
Let's do it.
5.
Let's do it at 2.
Okay.
That gives, because of, 4 o'clock, we maybe don't have
Right.
to stay there even after 5.
my only concern would be is
23rd.
constituents that want to be here that may have to work.
It's just a work session. There's nothing's voted on, and they can always look at the film. And I get it. I want them to attend as much as possible, but we also can't keep staff here every week, until 8 o'clock at night. We got to mix it up a little bit and give everybody a little bit. Got to be fair to everybody.
23rd, 2 o'clock.
23rd, 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock?
All right.
Is that what we said, 2?
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I think we made some progress.
I hope.
I'm not sure